Welcome to this webinar. My name's Jann Freed, but you can call me Dr. Jann, and I am hosting a Leadership Legacy Summit in June and interviewing many people for this summit, so you'll hear more about that later. Today I'm honored to interview David Burkus. David has several award-winning books. They've been translated into more than a dozen languages, and his TED Talk has been viewed over 2 million times. He pushes audiences to reconsider how they work both individually and in teams, and unlocks the methods top performers use to thrive at work and in life. A renowned expert, David's writings have appeared in the Wall Street Journal, Harvard Business Review, USAToday, Fast Company, and more. He's been interviewed by NPR, the BBC, CNN, and CBS This Morning. Since 2017, David has been ranked as one of the world's top business thought leaders by Thinkers 50. Well, welcome, David.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
You look too young to have achieved all that. That's not what I think, okay?
Well, so you're too kind. No, the truth is I just don't age. So when I was like 19, I looked 35, and now it's been that way for a long time.
Well,
I guess. Like people say like, oh, my hairline's receding. No, it's been that way since I was a kid. I won't stop right here.
You accomplished a lot, and that's great. Congratulations. Well, you have several books, so let's start with networking. What are the basics you need to know, regardless of age or stage of life, or does it even matter when it comes to networking?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the basic thing that most people suffer from, and then also need to get right, is a sort of reframe. I don't know where everybody usually had an initial exposure with networking, to be honest with you, that was negative, right? That was much more about running up the score or doing a numbers game, as it's often called in sales, where you just try and meet as many people as possible so you can convert them into contacts and potential referrals or clients or whatever. And running up the score is a terrible approach to networking. I think the biggest reframe is, let's eschew all of this language about building your network, growing your network, expanding your network. It's not your network. When we look at it from the world of network science, it's just the network, the community of people that are connected to each other, and you are a part of that. And the sooner you kind of take yourself out of the center and realize that it's just about where you are in the network and who you want to be connected to and where you want to navigate to, that's a much different approach, because now your focus isn't you and how many people you need to get connected to. It's about what's going on around me and how can I add value to that, and trust that that value will come back to me over time.
Yeah. Well, let's continue that. So what are some do's and don'ts about networking?
Yeah. I mean,
most of us do kind of have a negative feeling about it, and people still use the language that you said, well, you need to build your network. Well, that sounds too calculated. It sounds too manipulative,
Yeah. Well, I would say my biggest don't would be people tend to think networking is a verb, right? It's just a thing you do at a certain period of time. Like it's an event. And that's my biggest don't, is you don't need to go to these networking events, cocktail hours, etc. If you like them, I'm a fairly extrovert person. I kind of enjoy the social hour after a conference and that sort of stuff. But if you're totally drained by that, you don't need to be there. And the last thing you need is to be there, sitting in the corner with the two people you already knew, feeling guilty about the fact that you can't muster the energy to go meet anybody else. Because the research is actually really clear at all of these sort of unstructured networking events, whether it's a happy hour or the social hour after a conference or a dedicated meetup. When there's no structure and the whole point to the event is just to meet people, people don't meet people. People don't mix at these mixers. They spend a disproportionate amount of time with the people that they already know, partially because they're chasing their comfort zone, and partially because you already have things to talk about with those people, right? So if that's not your jive, if you don't enjoy doing that, you don't have to do it. Now, what you do need to do is have a strategy in place to kind of counteract that. I think there's really two things. There's going back to the people that you already know, and we can go way in depth on that and how that will probably serve you far better than trying to add new people to your contacts app on your phone. But the other thing is, if you really just abhor these types of activities, you can still get plugged in what in the research literature sometimes called shared activities, meaning things that collect a diverse amount of people for a reason other than connecting. This could be volunteering for a certain charity. This could be joining a certain sports league or hobby club or something like that. Some place where people are doing something other than connecting, because it makes people feel a whole lot more comfortable in that environment. You're much more likely to make a deep and meaningful connection with somebody when you're doing something with them alongside of them, as opposed to just face to face with them trying to give each other the perfect elevator pitch or something ridiculous like that.
That's good. Well, I know you're also into creativity. So how does creativity relate to networking?
Yeah,
Or
so
we network creatively.
Well, so creativity is a team sport. That's one of the things I said in the Myths of Creativity right off the bat. If you think that Edison was all alone in his factory trying 6,000 times to make a light bulb, I have a couple different biographies to send you, because it's not the case, right? But predominantly, the number one thing networks provide in any context, whether it's creativity or whether you're watching this to think about trying to find a new position or get promoted or find sales if you're a salesman, like, networks provide information. That's all they provide. They provide information from a variety of different sources. And in terms of creativity, the more diverse those sources, the more different perspectives the network around you lets you become exposed to, the more likely you are to generate a new and useful idea. So creativity sort of thrives on these networks when they're diverse and when you're tapping into a broad sense of viewpoints. If you're in an echo chamber, then your creativity is suffering for that same reason.
Excellent. Yeah, that's very good. Well, you're in New York, and it doesn't matter where we are, but jobs are being lost. Businesses may not reopen. I mean, this is a very challenging time. So how is networking different, or is it different, or how is it the same, or what, how is networking?
In my opinion, the tactics change, the strategy doesn't. So Friend of a Friend, my book on networking and really on network science and how networks work, and then how you can figure out what you need to do, really talked about how those networking events, the elevator pitch, forget all of that. The number one thing that you can do in terms of generating value for your network and then also creating value through that network for yourself, getting more of that information we just talked about, is reaching back out to weak or dormant ties, and then also kind of making that what we call the friend of a friend connection. That's why the book is called that, the 1 degree of separation out. And both of those things can be done remotely. Both of those things can be done even when we were in the lockedest down of the lockdown. I'm gonna coin a phrase there. I don't know if that's how you superlative the word lockdown, but we'll go with it. Even then, we still had the opportunity to do that. I mean, one of the prescriptions that I give a lot of people is reach back out to former colleagues, to people you haven't talked to in 12 months, 18 months, 2 years plus. Reach back out to them and just check in. And of course, the response I always get most of the time is, oh, but I don't know what to say. Oh, it would be so awkward. One of the very thin silver linings of this entire kind of crisis is that we become more pro-social, we become more human when we are faced by this crisis that we see all of humanity happens. We see it constantly with natural disasters, terrorist attacks, and now this. We become more pro-social, which means that you could reach out to just about anybody that is a former colleague, friend you haven't talked to in a long time, and just say, how are you holding up? How are you doing? I just wanted to check in on you. And that will be well received. I mean, it used to be a lot of people were really worried that if they did that, they're going to think, oh, well, this person's just trying to recruit me to sell essential oils or something crazy like that. But now we're in this moment where it will be received with the same authenticity it's given no matter what. So that's my biggest prescription right now, is use this time to check back in with those people. The fancy term in network science is they're a dormant tie. They're a tie that you need to reawaken. And now is actually a really easy time to do it, because we're all wanting to connect more with people in the face of this, not less.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. What else do you think people can do to keep building or leveraging their networks?
Yeah, so my next big prescription, and the 2 elements of what I sort of called the hidden network in the book, because it's the network that we all skip over. We all go to our close contacts whenever we have a problem or we need information, and we skip over those dormant ties, and we go right to the networking event that makes us all feel uncomfortable. We skip over that the best source of,
we should not be doing, yeah.
Exactly. We skip over that the best source of a new connection is usually through a friend of a friend, somebody you already know. So I encourage people to get really used to the idea of asking the question, who do you know in blank, when you're trying to find or build a group of contacts in a certain industry. Now, blank can be whatever you want. It can be the company that you're trying to find a connection to, maybe because you want to go to work there, or maybe because they would benefit from your services. It can be a city that maybe you're moving to. It can be a region you're just trying to learn a little bit about. I mean, one of the things that I've been doing for the last 2 years is I flipped from doing an audio podcast to doing a lot with video. We do regular videos on social media and on YouTube, which meant I needed to learn a lot about video. So for 2 years, I have been asking of just about anybody. When I get the opportunity, I'll say, hey, who do you know that works in film and television, right? I don't want to learn from YouTubers. I've learned enough from YouTubers. I want to learn, like, who are the people whose job it is to understand lighting? Because they're going to teach me about things like this light I got right here, right? They're going to teach me those things. So I've been asking that question often.
A light behind me.
Yeah. See, there you go.
Yeah.
So who do you know in blank? Who do you know in blank is my big question to be asking right now, because it does two things. The first is that it gives you a range of people that you can meet. And the second thing is that usually the people, if I asked you, hey, who do you know that works in film and television? The names that you give me are usually going to be people that you are comfortable introducing me to. And this is the problem with the way a lot of people approach trying to get connected through friends, is they start with the target, and then they find the person that can connect them, and they go beg that person for an introduction. And that's a huge problem, because every introduction is also a recommendation, and that person might not be comfortable recommending you. Maybe they don't know that person enough. Maybe they know you too well, and they know why you won't meet with that person. So you're trying to avoid that level of discomfort. And I find that taking that open posture, who do you know in blank, and then letting people kind of opt in or volunteer names is a much better strategy to get you where you want to go.
Yeah, that is really, I think, helpful. Well, besides what you've just shared, what else is your best advice to people at this time? Because there are a lot of people looking for jobs.
Yeah, I think now is also a pretty good time to be thinking about how the technical term in network science is homophily, how diverse or homogenous your network is. One of the things that we find, if you have been in the same career in the same industry for a long period of time, you're probably even responding to my advice about dormant ties as like, well, yeah, but they all work in the industry too, and I know I need to pivot because this industry is changing or something like that. So what I would encourage people to do then is even people who struggle with spending far too much time in one industry and not having a diverse enough network still have a small percentage of people that they talk to regularly that are different. So my big exercise when I work with a lot of executives especially is to ask them to audit their network, audit their time, and figure out who are like the top 25 people that they know that they interact with on a frequent basis, like top 25 people you talk to in a given month, right? Usually, especially if you've been in that industry for a long time, 20 out of those 25 people, give or take a few people, are going to be very similar to you. You're probably in an echo chamber, probably in a very homogenous network. But the good news is we've also identified the 5 that aren't. And so now what you need to do is look at your calendar going forward and make sure you're planning to spend a disproportionate amount of time with those people. Whatever little bit of diversity your network has, even if it's very self-similar and that's making you feel stuck, make a plan to spend more time with those people who are different from you, work in a different industry, etc. That's probably my biggest piece of advice, because they're going to open up your network over time by introducing you to people from their world, from their cluster, their corner of the network, which by definition is different than yours, and that'll open up a whole lot more opportunity.
Yeah, it's kind of counterintuitive, or the road less traveled or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so organizations are very up or out, and they have no interest in keeping you diverse as you're going up that function, right? I mean, by definition, it's a hierarchy. So the higher you climb on the ladder, the less people are at that rung, right? Yeah. And they don't care what happens to the people that aren't in the org. Now, this is a big problem, and I work with a lot of leaders on this, especially from a creativity and innovation side. But generally, they don't care. So the fact that you are more insulated as you go up, that's something that the system itself creates, and something that the system's not incentivized to solve. It's only actually a problem when you're one of the people that ended up out instead of going out to the next rung. And so you have to take it upon yourself to be deliberately cultivating those diverse connections as you go, because your organization, your industry is not going to do it for you.
No. Well, that's excellent. Well, we're going to shift gears here a little bit, and then we're going to come back. Okay.
All right.
I'm real interested in legacy work and leaders' legacy. So How do you define legacy? What's it mean to you when I even use that term?
I mean, the first thing I think about is who, which is probably more important than how many people are going to be at my funeral, right? Who are the people that are actually impacted enough to kind of make the trip? And what's funny is I actually see a lot of people are concerned with the how many, right? Even when we talk about what's the term, resume values versus, eulogy values.
Yeah.
Even then we talk about, like, we define a good life as the number of people that showed up. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in who, and then of that who, did I spend enough time to make sure we develop that relationship, right? So, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I started down this path when I was married but childless. And so a lot of it was, I want to be a writer, I want to be a speaker, I want to travel and work with organizations. I need to be as popular and liked on social media, et cetera, as possible. And then these two little boys came into my life, and suddenly I don't care about a lot of that anymore, right? I mean, I still want to have an impact, but I've become more comfortable with the idea that if only a small percentage of people get exposed to my work, but it affects them deeper than a large number of people a little bit, I'm way more happy with that. So that's kind of where I go when I think about this term legacy, is that who, and then whoever it is, are you making sure you're spending enough time with them now so that they will end up there?
Yeah, no, that's good. Can you share a story that comes to mind related to you or someone else about legacy?
Yeah, so ironically, we were talking about it a bit before we shared, but my best front row seat to somebody who's been very deliberate about their legacy is my friend Marshall Goldsmith. Marshall, and I am so honored that I can even say my friend Marshall Goldsmith. So Marshall is somebody that I read when I was in graduate school, right? Marshall is somebody that I looked up to as a researcher and an executive coach. And as he approached 70, he started asking that legacy question. And so he decided that he was going to build what he called the 100 coaches. And it's now a little bit more than that, but that's a secret. And it was going to be people that he was going to pour back into. He basically said, if you can meet me, I'm going to be in certain cities and certain weekends. And if you can meet me, and I'm in Scottsdale this weekend for work, so I'm going to stay a couple extra days, and let's all meet at this hotel, or let's all come to La Jolla where I'm based. No guilt, no obligation if you can't come, but if you can come on a regular basis, I'll teach you everything I know. I'll teach you what I've learned about being a coach and all of this sort of stuff. And he's somebody that basically paid attention to that he was thinking, I have all this intrinsic knowledge of what I've learned becoming, I mean, the number one executive coach in the world multiple years over. Who am I going to give that back to? Is such a deliberate act of thinking about legacy. I've been absolutely honored to be a part of it and have a front row seat of it. And I will tell you, there is one obligation when you join the MG 100, as we call it, is that you've got to do the same thing. So I'm thinking about this. I mean, I'm still on the front side of my life, but I'm still thinking about this when we ease into retirement. How is there going to be a DB 100, right? It'll probably be like a DB 7, just because I'm thinking about me versus Marshall. But, so I've been thinking about that out of the blue. That's been, it was about 2.5 years since Marshall called my cell phone. I still don't know how he got my cell phone number, actually, out of the blue, and just said, do you want to join the 100 coaches? And I said, what's the 100 coaches? And I'm really glad I did, because it's been an amazing front row viewing of what it takes to build a deliberate legacy as a leader.
That's a great example. And I mentioned to you earlier that Marshall was one of the sages who I interviewed for my Leading with Wisdom, sage advice from 100 experts. And first of all, he's just very generous. Anyway,
oh, absolutely.
All resources. But how long will he keep doing this then?
I don't know. I mean, to be honest with you, this is definitely something that will outlast him. I don't know how much longer we're going to be blessed to have him around. I think it's a long time. I mean, I think we've still got a generation, right? But I look at the community that's being built and the way that, like, we're recording this in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis. When that crisis started happening in mid-March,
right, we
started jumping on a daily call. Every day there's an open Zoom line at 8 a.m. my time. Whatever time it is for everyone else, I don't, but there's an open Zoom line for those people to come together and talk, right? So it's not just we're all taking notes from him individually. He's been very deliberate about building a community. That community I'm fairly confident we'll refer to ourselves as the MG 100 long after he's gone. Yes. And we'll still have this network that he built of people that are helping each other and are building upon his ideas.
Yes, no, that's just a perfect example. In fact, I need to interview Marshall about that.
Yeah, we got to get him on here. Yeah.
That's a great story. How do you think people might change how they view their legacy or what legacy means, during this pandemic or because of the pandemic? Do you
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think my hope.
even with your conversations with Marshall, has that come up at all?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, my bigger hope, to be honest with you, is that people have a greater responsibility for their legacy outside of their career. I mean, I think, and this is something that's been a problem since, I don't know, the 1980s was the first wake-up call, and we still didn't wake up, and the number of hours worked per week and all that sort of thing just kept going up. But that was the big wake-up call that, like, your organization, not exactly loyal to you. I mean, it's great. There are organizations transform the world. They're the greatest invention in the history of mankind. So I don't want to sound like this staunch anti-capitalist. That's not me. What I mean, though, is that when it comes to legacy, that is an individual question. No one's going to remember you. No one's going to write a obituary to you because you were the vice president of marketing at nameless Fortune 1000 company. That's not going to happen. The people you influenced along your career, the people you influenced in your home life, et cetera, that's going to matter. And so this is one more lesson. I'm got to be honest with you. I'm at the point where I don't know how many more lessons it's going to take. But I'm grateful that we have one more lesson. It seems like every 2 or 3 years we're going to get this lesson, and then we all go back to the way. I don't know how many more it's going to take, but I'm grateful for every single one of those.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, I want to go back now because you really you're kind of a wealth of knowledge on a lot of different topics. So I want to ask the question, what do you want to share that I didn't ask, or what do you think people need to know? What wisdom and anything. I mean, we can go in a different direction. I mean, I know that you've got so many free resources on your website, and they're complimentary, but I mean, what do you really want to share that I didn't ask?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll be honest with you. So Friend of a Friend came out a couple years ago, and it was about networks and community and teams. I mean, really the through line through a lot of my work is about teams. You can't talk about teams without talking about the leader or the absence of a leader, which we wrote about a bit in Underdue Management. And so one of the things I started thinking about after Friend of a Friend was what really bonds and motivates teams together. And there's a lot of great stuff out there. I mean, we talk about, Daniel Coyle has this great book called The Culture Code, which is really about psychological safety, how that plays into great teams. And Shane Snow has this great book called Dream Teams, which is all about how you have intellectual diversity, right? And how you make that work and not cause friction. But all of them sort of missed one thing that was undeniable. And I actually hinted at it earlier, which is this idea that when there's outside adversity, people get more bonded together, become more pro-social. And I started following that research. And what I arrived at is what I think is actually the missing piece from a lot of teams and a lot of organizations, which is that we've talked about for 20 plus years now the importance of mission and vision and drive in an organization. And I don't think that does it, because we still see a gap between the mission of an organization and the day-to-day jobs we're asking people to do. I think the missions, the leaders that actually bond teams together and get them unified and aligned actually have found a way to answer a question. And it's a very weird question, but the question is, what are we fighting for? I think we're not using, we spent too much time using this fight rhetoric to talk about rivals and competitors. And I think it's a waste of breath. I think it's, people want to join a crusade, people want to join a fight, but they want to fight for something bigger that shapes their values and shapes the future. They want to fight against a negative potential future and towards a positive one. And we've done a decent job talking about the towards a positive one, but we haven't done enough talking about what's at stake if we don't accomplish the mission. So I put a lot of that together in this little audio program I made, and we released with Audible about 2 months ago or so, called Pick a Fight. The idea being you got to pick a fight, but you have to choose your fight wisely, because the fight against rivals and that sort of thing won't work. And so that's big. One of my big things, even in the context of legacy and in leadership, is that idea, can people, when they look at what you're trying to do, can people identify this is the justice that they're trying to fight for, or this is the brighter future that they're trying to fight for, this is what they're trying to fight to prove in terms of a point. I think that rhetoric has been used, unfortunately, to talk about competitors far too often, and thinking that it would motivate people. And the missing piece isn't the fight. The missing piece is, what are you fighting for, not who are you fighting against. So I've been thinking a lot about that recently and putting a lot of those thoughts out there.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. Well, our time is kind of coming to an end. closing words of wisdom. I mean, I'm really impressed with this community that you're a part of with Marshall Goldsmith and others. And actually, let me ask you about that. So what have you probably learned? What are some things that you've learned from that community?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is, to be honest with you, a lot of it's a little inside baseball where we just have this community where we can go, hey, I'm struggling with a client who's doing this, or what would you do about this situation? Or even just seeing, I mean, I come from the world of author, speaker, kind of personal brand, and there's several people in that world. And how did you do those sort of things? What the bigger lesson to me is that when you build that network, great things happen. I mean, not to go full circle, but I'm going to go full circle on you, which is we talked about how the big lesson in networking is not that it's not about your contacts. Marshall already had this 100+ people in his, obviously he had him in his phone because he called mine and I still don't know how. But the value was created when he chose to make those people into a network. So that's been, I mean, it's a relearn for me, not a learn, but it's an amazing example to see that, yeah, there's lots of little things and trade secrets that we've traded, but the big lesson is how much value you create and then how much value spills back to you when you focus on creating a community as opposed to just a group of people that know you.
Right. Well, and really the value of the community. I mean, what you're really talking about are relationships.
Yeah. And relationships, not just to one person, but making sure the people in your life know each other as well. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. That's really great. Well, I want to thank you very much, David, and I'm honored. And again, this is going to be part of a leadership summit in June, and people will hear more about that. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. Thanks so much for reaching out.
And keep up the good work. I also say in this series that, my focus is on making the rest of life the best of life. So may the rest be the best for you.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Thank you so much.
Okay. Stay healthy, stay hopeful. Thank you.